This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto befriended Peter Parker. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
This was not how it was intended to be. Spider-Man was the ray of hope for everyone in New York City. Every time a damsel in distress needed saving, he was the hero. However, he was now webbed down by venom and stuck onto a metal paling of an incomplete construction site, while the Sandman's strong sand fist pounded down on him. He knew he was dying. He was already weak, and he was having trouble breathing. Ultimately, it appeared that his best friend Harry had failed to support him. Peter Parker gave a feeble smile as a flash of green appeared at the edge of his vision. The new goblin was here, Harry. He might be able to save Mary Jane, but it would be too late. He struggled for his last breath and yelled, "Save MJ!" at his friend. The Sandman rushed at him with his enormous fist, and he had no further knowledge. Both dying and waking up were strange experiences. Above him, he could see bright lights, but everything else was hazy. He let out a thin, high-pitched wail, "Wah Euro." Peter froze. All that came out of his mouth was a weak, unnatural cry. He had intended to say what the devil was going on. He made an attempt to turn his head but was unsuccessful. He could only see that he was lying in a wooden cot of some sort. Peter froze in disbelief as he attempted to raise his hands and saw two small, plump, infant-like hands wave in front of him. Since he was the one in charge of them, he was aware that they were his hands. Shaw! Peter screamed in terror as he had an idea. He had somehow turned into a baby, but instead of swearing in all the languages he knew, he just made baby gurgles. Peter tried to think of all the possible outcomes. He thought of his battle with Venom and the Sandman. He was certain that he had died. When he was a baby, why was he here? He had never been particularly interested in religion, but he was not completely ignorant of it, so a random thought occurred to him. It didn't make sense for some religions to claim to believe in reincarnation because, in their view, a person would have forgotten about his previous life and started over in his new one. In his mind, a voice said, "You are different." Peter exclaimed, "Wah!" as something scuttled across his face. He can't brush the offending object off him with his baby hands. The tiny black spider sitting on Peter's nose caught his attention as a black object appeared. The voice, which Peter was certain was that of the spider, said, "You are one of the chosen one and your trial has begun." Peter was about to inquire about its meaning when the spider vanished into a cloud of black smoke. At that moment, his cot started to tremble as an outside force fought outside the structure. His hearing was still keen, and he could hear screams and the sounds of fighting outside even though his vision wasn't the best right now. Then, all around him, the sounds of terrified infants started to cry one by one. Peter was certain that he was in some kind of nursery, even though he couldn't see over his cot. A few moments later, a woman with brown hair and a harried demeanor appeared above his cot. She stepped back when she noticed he wasn't crying. Peter thought she was soothing the other babies based on the noises she was making. When Peter was unable to understand the language being used, he scowled. The room was suddenly filled with a sharp, masculine voice that seemed to be giving an order. The nurse, or whoever she was, had left the room based on the sounds of her heels clipping sharply. The infants started to cry in terror, but nobody arrived this time. Never in his life had Peter Parker felt so powerless. Something was going on outside the building, and he was still a baby, barely able to move his hand. Peter was thankful that his spider senses had triggered multiple times. It indicated that although the webbing and spider strength appeared to have left him, he still possessed some of his spider abilities. He waited for an unknown amount of time. It was long enough that the infant's cries had become thin, hoarse, and sharp. For so long that he lost control of his bladder and poured a warm liquid into his diapers. Peter was uncomfortable in his wet diapers. Now he knew for sure that he did not enjoy being a baby. With the sound of battle raging outside, he finally lost the ability to open his weary eyes and fell into a deep, restful sleep. When he opened his eyes again, his wooden cot was trembling violently, though he was not sure what had woken him. Over him stood a man with blonde hair who appeared to have been through hell because of the blood and scratches on his face. The man laid a second sleeping child next to him. In a strange language Peter could not understand, he said something. He could only make out the word, Naruto, which, based on the man's pronunciation, appeared to be the name of the infant who was currently sharing his cot. The man then sagged over the cot as his face went white. Even as Peter realized the man was dead, he could see the sorrowful smile that was etched on his face. He was terrified. What could possibly be going on outside? At that moment, however, he became aware that the sounds of combat had stopped. The baby started crying pathetically, as though he knew instinctively that someone close to him had passed away, and he turned his head to face his neighbor. This marked the start of Peter Parker's new life in Konoha, a ninja village. It had been terrible for the first 4 years. The life he had planned for himself was not the life at an orphanage. However, he was still a frail infant and, later, a toddler who needed to be fed by adults. Additionally, he learned more about the world he was in. He became aware that he was no longer on Earth by the time he was 4 years old. One reason was that during his first 3 years of life, he had gradually learned the peculiar language used by the adults. The majority of the spoken sentences didn't make sense until a troupe of performing ninjas had visited the orphanage to entertain the kids during a festival, but Peter could now understand their conversations. They had used a variety of hand seals to accomplish a number of impossible feats. Things like calling forth water clones of themselves, disappearing and then resurfacing in a flash. These were tasks that the people of Earth could not accomplish, but it seems that the people of this world can. He had asked the matron in a childish voice how they could make walls out of earth or call forth fire dragons. They were ninjas, the matron had explained patiently, and they were able to do these impossible things by manipulating chakra. Another child then raised additional questions, but the matron brushed him off with a chilly stare. When Peter turned around, he saw Naruto, the infant who had been in his cot on the night of his birth. Even though Peter had never witnessed Naruto do anything to merit it, the adults at the orphanage somehow treated the young child with disdain and contempt. The other kids gradually started to treat the young boy with the same degree of disdain as a result of the adults' attitudes. Knowing and detesting his reliance on the adults at the orphanage, Peter had discreetly avoided contact, understanding that he could not provoke him a euro. At least not while he was still unable to defend himself. He had therefore kept a close eye on Naruto, playing with him when no one else would and giving him leftovers from his own dinner whenever the adults tried to deny him dinner as a form of retaliation for any minor offenses he had committed against them. When Peter discovered a bunch of 5-year-old bullies banding together against Naruto, who was playing alone at the time, it was the final straw. After taking one look, the matron walked out of the room without turning around. The thinly veiled satisfaction on her face as she left, however, was not lost on Peter. The 4-year-old, who was crouching on the floor and whimpering, was being kicked and punched by the bullies nearby. The other toddlers watched the scene with a healthy dose of fear that they would be the next to be targeted. Peter's gaze grew strained. He picked up a play block and gave one of the boys a hard thump on the head. "Stop that!" Peter yelled, disregarding caution. He discovered that his strength and endurance were gradually returning over the course of the 3 years. Although he wasn't particularly strong, his little 3-year-old body had the strength and power of a 6-year-old. Additionally, it was sufficient to break one of the bullies' heads with his flying block. Additionally, his vision had improved, giving him pinpoint accuracy as he started hurling whatever toys he could find at the bullies. To dodge his flying projectiles, which struck them with excruciating thumps, the bullies screamed and sprang around. However, Peter quickly ran out of toys. As the battered bullies approached him menacingly, he watched in horror. He got up and got ready to fight, his little fist curled into a ball. With just him and 4 bullies who were all larger and more powerful than him, the odds were not in his favor. The bully who got to him first lifted his fist and hit him. As Peter prepared to duck, he was taken aback when the bully was tackled to the ground by a white blur. When Naruto got up from the bully, he looked into his serious eyes. Despite his tears and facial and arm bruises, he remained resolute. In plain English, Naruto said, "You my friend." Peter was somewhat moved as he gave Naruto a startled look. Like the majority of toddlers, Naruto could only speak in fragmented sentences and had still developing cognitive abilities. The adults in the orphanage took great pride in Peter's proficiency in spoken language, making him an exception. Peter ruffled Naruto's hair with his outstretched hand. He stated, "We fight." He was aware that Naruto was still likely unsure of the definition of the word, fight. He hurled himself at the bullies, and Naruto followed suit, his face lighting up with comprehension. But with 4 people who were stronger than them, their resolve did not help. By the time the matron came back, Peter had a split lip and multiple bruises, while Naruto had a black eye and more. The 4 bullies, on the other hand, had not fared any better, the majority of them were bruised. As the matron approached, Peter stood guard over Naruto. The matron briefly glanced at their beaten bodies, and a glimmer of emotion appeared on her face. Confusion, guilt, and a little self-loathing. But as she gathered up the hurt kids and started tending to their injuries, she remained silent. However, the matron's treatment of Naruto changed as a result of that incident. She avoided him most of the time as though he were a bad memory to be forgotten, but she no longer gave him icy looks or disgusted looks. Additionally, Peter and Naruto were no longer bothered by the bullies. Thus, Naruto and Peter's friendship was established. The answer is yes. After 2 months, Peter watched the elderly man who had come to see Naruto with curiosity. He was the only adult who showed Naruto love and care out of all of them. Although he had previously seen him a few times at the orphanage, this was the first time he had paid attention to the man. The elderly man was also treated with dignity by all of the adults at the orphanage, who called him Hoka. Age, or something. He was still unable to comprehend that one word. Before continuing to draw, Peter kept a close eye on Naruto to make sure the elderly man wouldn't mistreat him. Peter had seized the opportunity to do something clever once more when the matron had introduced them to pencil and paper. He then went on to sketch the people and objects he recalled from his earlier years in New York. He was hailed as a young prodigy by the adults, who were especially impressed by his intricate and skillfully rendered drawings. He was playing with the play blocks like a typical 4-year-old, and Peter didn't mind because he was having so much fun. Eventually, he hoped, the adults would let him read the books and scrolls in the library of the orphanage. A voice behind him remarked, "That's a very nice picture, though a very strange bridge." The old man had wandered over, and Peter turned to smile at him. At his side, Naruto was holding the elderly man's hand. Peter stated, "It's a bridge." He had sketched the bridge over the Golden Gate. He had seen images of it but had never been there himself. Mary Jane had shown him enough photos to help him recall it. He recalled Mary Jane telling him she hoped to go to San Francisco with him someday. Of course, that is no longer possible. The elderly man pondered, "One made of metal from what I can tell from the picture. I'm not sure if that would be possible, but you have quite the idea, don't you?" Shrugging, Peter remarked, "I love drawing. I want to read too, but the matron wouldn't let me." After looking into his eyes, the elderly man grinned. "Ah, a child eager for knowledge, that's rare. I'll speak with the matron for you. I think she's just afraid you'll mess up the books and scrolls. Books and scrolls are hard to get for an orphanage, you know." Peter hurriedly said, "I'll take care of them, I promise." The old man then leaned down and whispered to Peter, as though asking a question, "Very well then, I'll hold you to the promise. I heard you are Naruto's friend?" Naruto gave him a shy look, and Peter nodded, "He is my friend." "Aha, you're good. The elderly man nodded contentedly. "You seem mature for your age. Take care of Naruto for me, will you?" Feeling as if he had passed a test, Peter pledged, "All." The answer is yes. After 3 years. As they crept around the orphanage's walls, Naruto whispered, "Peter. Hurry, I think the show's starting." It was their birthdays today. Peter shook his head quickly, realizing that the past was the past, as his thoughts strayed to the date of another of his birthdays. Naruto had proposed that they sneak outside to observe the yearly celebration, which the orphanage kids were never permitted to attend. During the festival, the Kyuubi, a 9-tailed fox demon with immense powers, was defeated. It had been defeated by the 4th Hokage, who had sacrificed his life for it. Peter could still recall how the matron had narrated the tale while displaying hand-drawn images of the 4th Hokage, who had appeared strikingly familiar. In fact, he was reminded of the blonde man who had died after abandoning Naruto in his crib every time he saw the 4th Hokage's photos. The matron said that man couldn't have been the 4th Hokage because he had died out in the battlefield. However, Peter couldn't get rid of the impression that the 4th Hokage appeared familiar. In addition, Naruto was frequently visited by the 3rd Hokage to see how he was doing. Naturally, he was now aware that the Hokages were the most senior ninjas in Konoha, and he was curious about Naruto's relationship with the 3rd Hokage. Peter tried to be the sensible one and said, "Naruto, maybe we shouldn't. They could encounter any kind of trouble in the middle of the night on unfamiliar streets because they were only 7 years old. Come on, Peter, we've never been to a festival before. Matron brought the other kids to them last year but not us," Naruto begged. Peter hesitated. It was accurate, but Peter had chosen to remain with his friend at the festival after the matron refused to take Naruto. It also contributed to Peter's anxiety about attending the festival without any adults to watch over them. Although Peter could never understand why, the majority of the adults seemed to despise Naruto for some reason, and the matron, who no longer detested him, appeared concerned about taking him along. Unlike some of the children in the orphanage, Naruto was a hyper but courteous child who did not appear to have a vindictive streak from birth. Peter had remained with Naruto for all these years because of this. Actually, on their 6th birthday, they had exchanged vows in a ceremony beneath the willow tree behind the orphanage. They were now blood brothers to Naruto. He rushed after his sworn brother, shouting, "All right, but let's be careful, Okayuro. Naruto, wait for me." The answer is yes. They had never witnessed a festival like this one. Many people and stalls selling goods and food were present. Additionally, there were numerous traveling ninjas performing various stunts. Pushing through the crowds, Naruto and Peter gazed in wonder at everyone and everything. Naruto remarked, "This is great. We should come out again next year," as they sat on a fence. Some of the villagers were giving them strange looks, and Peter narrowed his eyes. However, he forgot about them because they didn't annoy either of them. They watched some itinerant ninjas perform in the village square from the fence. Peter was astounded by everything they were capable of. This world's inhabitants were truly remarkable. For hours, Naruto and Peter watched the performance from the fence. Peter became aware that something was amiss when they made the decision to return to the orphanage. They heard shouts and running feet behind them as they were strolling through a remote area of the town. Peter grabbed Naruto's arm and began to run as his spider sense began to activate. As Peter dragged Naruto with him, Naruto exclaimed, "Peter, why are we running?" Peter said without hesitation, "I can sense that something is off." Naruto swallowed and accelerated his legs. After spending so many years with Peter, Naruto trusted his instincts, knowing that he would always have a sixth sense when something negative was about to happen. Someone exclaimed, "There he is! That's the fox bastard," as a group of irate and inebriated villagers appeared behind them. "Demon!" exclaimed someone. As a glass bottle of alcohol crashed into the road next to them, Peter grabbed Naruto and ducked to the side. The leader of the crowd yelled, "He's with another brat. They're together. Demons in cohort, get them." As they attempted to flee, Naruto and Peter gasped. Peter might have managed to get away, but Naruto, who was only 7 years old, lacked the strength and endurance to hold off the gang for very long. When something violently crashed into Naruto's back, he let out a cry and collapsed to the ground. Someone shouted, "The fox brat is down. Get him," as the crowd surged ahead. Peter positioned himself in front of Naruto with a grim expression. He had to buy Naruto some time to get away, but he had no idea what was happening. He didn't have time to say anything more before the crowd slammed into him with wooden clubs and wine bottles. "Naruto, get up quickly. We have to run a euro." Peter repelled them with icy effectiveness. He was still not as strong as he was as Spider-Man, but his strength had increased over the years. His punching power was that of a 16-year-old, but it was ineffective against a group of irate villagers. Even with his agility, which was his only defense, he was knocked backwards by powerful blows. Behind him, Naruto let out a cry of agony. The majority of the crowd had rushed to Naruto and began punching and kicking him. How could the villagers have done this? Peter felt sick to his stomach. They were only kids. Peter angrily yelled, "Get off Naruto," as the whole scene turned red. Never in his life had he felt so angry and powerless. "Get off him." Peter used all of his strength to push at the villagers, knocking a few to the ground as his strength suddenly increased. Menacingly, one of them held up a glass bottle to slam it down on him. Peter automatically extended his hand in a futile effort to block it. Snark. When Peter heard the webbing fly from his right wrist into his assailant's eye, he blinked. The man was blinded by the webbing and staggered. Peter pulled his hands back and saw the tiny, hardly perceptible webbing flaps that had developed on his wrists. He's got his webbings back. He has regained all of his spider abilities. Unfortunately, his strength depended on his age and physical attributes. Peter glared at his assailants. At least he now had a weapon to use against the crowd. Several of the villagers were sent tumbling down after he shot a webbing that tangled their legs. Then he used his webbings to drag the remaining villagers away from Naruto. Something heavy slammed into Peter as his spider senses screamed and he quickly spun around. One of the villagers landed on top of Peter, holding him down onto the ground as he crashed into it with a painful cry. With a crazy expression on his face, the man declared, "You're with the fox demon, your life ends here." He had alcohol on his breath, and Peter could smell it. The man made a hand seal and slammed his hand into Peter's chest, causing him to gasp. His body instantly lost all of its strength, and he lay paralyzed on the ground. As the man pinned him down with one hand while holding a knife in the other, Peter could only watch numbly. He heard Naruto yelling in pain to his left. Peter turned his head, using what little strength he had left. A knife slashed down at Naruto, and Peter saw his pale, bleeding face through a gap in the crowd. It was occurring once more. He was going to die, and Naruto would die with him this time. However, he was not going down without a fight. Something exploded inside him, a dark, glistening emotion of anger that burned through him, and he refused to die like a helpless little child. Then someone spoke. "Do you want to be a chosen one with power?" It was a voice that was both gentle and frightening, and he heard this voice in his head. Peter was too weak to speak. However, he could express his feelings in other ways. "I want to survive. Give me the authority to keep my friends safe." Peter let out a mental scream. As Peter watched the ninja on top of him use his knife to slash down, time seemed to slow down. Despite his knowledge of his impending death, he maintained hope because of his humanity. I hope that someone will hear his prayers and come to their rescue. Then I give you what you want. That's what the voice said. Then Peter felt the knife pierce his chest. Boom. The ninja was swept off Peter by something big and black that materialized behind him. The remainder of the crowd is then ravaged by it. 2 young boys were bleeding to death. A giant black spider was watching over them, and numerous seriously injured villagers and ninja were strewn across the streets when the military police arrived. The third Hokage, Sarutobi, was shaking with barely contained anger. He had just degraded one Chunin's rank and imprisoned a number of villagers before sending him to the Anbu for punishment. His fears were validated during the subsequent hospital visit, where he observed the doctors hastily tending to the 2 severely wounded young boys. Then, unable to do much else but get ready for the upcoming council meeting, he had gone back to his office. His door was knocked on. His secretary, a Chunin who had applied for a desk job, came in. His secretary said, "Hokage Sama, Fugaku Uchiha had ordered an emergency clan heads meeting." Sarutobi moaned, "Damn those bloody Uchihas." The worst thing about being a Hokage was this. He was disgusted by the political scheming of some of the bigger clans, and he suspected he knew why the emergency meeting had been called. The attack on the 2 young boys couldn't be the reason. Few clan leaders would bother to get together to talk about some sporadic violence. The council would be more concerned with what transpired during the attack. By the time Sarutobi arrived, the clan leaders were gathered in the clan hall in a rare display of solidarity. The third Hokage surveyed the area calmly. It was most likely Fugaku who had brought everyone together so quickly. After all, Peter and Naruto were discovered first by the military police, who were primarily composed of Uchihas. Sarutobi took his seat at the head of the table and cast a grim glance around the council. Sarutobi posed the rhetorical question, "Why is this council called?" since he already knew the answer. Fugaku's throat cleared. It has come to the clan chief's attention that a new bloodline has emerged in Konoha. All the clan chiefs are gathered here today to address this issue. Sarutobi's mouth pressed glumly together. It seems that a new bloodline was more significant than the fact that a mob tonight gravely injured 2 children. Yes, it is true. Murayu, who was known as Peter in the orphanage, was diagnosed by the head doctor at the hospital of having a bloodline that is closely tied to the spiders. Sarutobi replied. Since all bloodlines in Konoha had to be publicly registered, there was no point in concealing the fact that the results would be well known by tomorrow. The head of the Aburame household pondered, "An insect bloodline then? A boy with a funny name, a Euro. Where is the boy in question? He's still under treatment in the hospital for his injuries, and according to the matron at the orphanage, he insisted to be called by the name Peter from the day he was able to speak coherently," Sarutobi stated. "I've heard that a Chunin instigated an attack on the boy and Uzumaki Naruto. Has the Chunin in question been punished?" asked Shikaku Nara. Sarutobi smiled tensely and nodded to the man in question. The Naras, Yamanakas, and Akamichis were among the few clans in Konoha that did not actively harbor animosity toward the demon container. The Naras are a family of thinkers, and although they suffered some losses during the QB attack, they knew better than to blame a boy who had done nothing wrong. The Naras set the example for the Yamanakas and Akamichis. He has been stripped of his rank and sent to the Anbu for questioning. The head of the Aburame clan said, "I see. What are Murayu's powers in question?" According to the tests, Murayu possesses enhanced speed, strength, and senses along with the ability to emit a web-like substance. He will heal faster than the average human, and there might still be other unknown abilities we have not learned of, Sarutobi stated. He also possesses an innate summon for the spiders. The clan leaders gazed at him in silence. In a tense voice, the head of the Inazaka clan stated, "There has not been a case of a person possessing the ability to summon without signing a contract for decades. And I've never heard of a summons for spiders. As you're all aware, the current summoning contracts all over the world always began with one person who was somehow given the ability to summon their own particular creature. No one really knows why the first summoners were able to do what they did," Sarutobi continued. "I think you're all well aware that Murayu might be the first summoner for the spiders, and only he can say who he would pass the contract to." "Well, that's well and good, Hokage Sama, but let's move on to the important thing." Fugaku intervened. According to the public records, Murayu is the lone survivor of his family. The rest were wiped out 8 years ago in the QB attack. Seeing that he's a bloodline wielder, the law states that a Euro. With a frown, Sarutobi stated, "I am aware of the law, Fugaku. I was the one that created the law on bloodline wielders." "Then you're aware that since he's the only survivor of his bloodline and also a minor who cannot fend for himself, special care must be taken for his survival," Fugaku continued. On behalf of the Uchiha clan, I would like to take him in as a member of my clan. Sarutobi's gaze grew strained. This is what he knew would happen. The Uchihas would not accept second place because they were hungry for power. It would be advantageous for each clan to adopt the child and, ideally, marry the child within their clans now that a new bloodline and summoning contract had emerged. The head of the Aburame clan said, "I object. Seeing that the child's abilities are of an insect-type bloodline, it would be prudent to leave that child in the care of the Aburame clan where we could provide more understanding for his powers. The Uchihas would be able to provide for the boy better. We know thousands of jutsus at Euro." The Inazaka, Nara, Yamanaka, and Akamichi clan heads were the only ones remaining neutral as the other clan heads joined in the arguments, so Sarutobi ignored the remainder of the discussion. The archivist responsible for the public records of the Konoha entered after hearing a knock on the door. He passed a piece of paper to the Hokage and walked out of the room. Observing the recently acquired data, Sarutobi grinned. "It seemed that I've found a way to resolve this problem," Sarutobi replied. The clan chiefs turned to him as they paused their debates. "Do all of you agree that Muryu should be taken in by one of the clans instead of surviving in the orphanage?" "Of course, Hokage. Sama. We can't have a repeat of what happened today. This boy contains a new bloodline and a new summon. He must be protected," Fugaku replied. Sarutobi turned to the head of the Nara clan and asked, "Very well then. Shikaku, do you recall Tomase Nara?" Shikaku Nara questioned, "My great-aunt? What does she have to do with this?" Seeing Shikaku's eyes brighten with comprehension, Sarutobi grinned and said, "She married Naden Ryu, grandfather of Muryu. Muryu is distantly related to the Nara clan and as such, you will be allowed first choice for the custody of the child. Do you accept?" The head of the Aburame clan sat quietly and watched the events while Fugaku spluttered his protest off to the side. Shikaku Nara sighed and swiftly straightened himself after the Hokage gave him a stern look that threatened to send him to hell if he didn't agree. "I see a Euro that's troublesome, a Euro," he said. "Ere Euro, truthfully I have no problem with Ida Euro. I would need to discuss with my clan, but I foresee no objections on their part." "But Hokage, Sama Euro," mentioned Fugaku. "By law of Konoha, the Nara clan is allowed first choice to the boy based on their distant blood ties." Sarutobi responded with firmness. "This you well know. As such, this is the end of the matter today. Is there anything else that needs to be brought to my attention right now?" The head of the Aburame clan said, "Yes, Hokage. Sama. With you and Shikaku's permission, I would like to assist in the training of the boy a Euro." As he heard the Aburame clan head's suggestion, Sarutobi grinned. A political quagmire was averted, and one issue was resolved. The boy would be protected from the Uchihas, who could use him as a political pawn, at least if the Naras took care of him. Now that the issue had been resolved, Sarutobi's mind turned to the two kids who were currently in the hospital, particularly Naruto. He hoped everything would be okay with them. After 6 days, Peter, wake up. When someone started shaking Peter, he moaned, "Hamayuro, let me sleep." "OG.san," went Naruto's voice. "Why is Peter like that? He's been sleeping for days." Sarutobi's voice said, "Naruto, most people heal much slower than you do. Peter is already healing faster than normal people." Naruto questioned, "You mean we're special?" Peter grabbed the pillow beneath his head and hurled it toward Naruto's voice. "Oomph!" exclaimed Naruto. Peter said, "I can't sleep with you chatting here," as he stood up. "I swear you come here every morning just to annoy me." "That's because you're still in the hospital. I got well on my 2nd day here." Naruto sighed. "But it's your 6th day already and you still have to stay here. The orphanage is very boring without you." Understanding Naruto's emotions, Peter sighed. At the orphanage, people tended to ignore Naruto and leave him on his own, even though no one dared to treat him badly anymore. Peter turned to the Hokage and said, "Well, I am doing everything I can to get better." Peter tapped the knife wound on his chest and explained, "Hokage. Sama, can I leave the hospital today? The wound is almost healed now." "Well, it just happened that I had a talk with the doctor just now. You'll most probably be allowed to leave if there are no unforeseen problems." Sarutobi replied with a grin. His face changed, and he sighed. "But there are some things that we need to talk about. Naruto, you remember Shikaku.san who came with us to the hospital? He should be talking to the doctor. Get him here, all right?" Naruto exclaimed, "All right, OG.san," as he hurried from the room. Something about the old man's expression made Peter feel exhausted, and he watched the Hokage with a sinking feeling. Peter hurriedly concluded his remarks with a fiery, "Is it about the villagers? I already said Naruto and I did nothing to provoke them and I am really sorry for hurting them. even though I don't remember summoning the spider you told me about. And they do deserve what they got. Now Peter, calm down. This isn't about the villagers, though I've seen to it that the people responsible are punished. Sarutobi assured him. But the emergence of your unique abilities must be carefully cultivated. A Euro a Shikaku. You're here, that's good. A man in his early 30s with a fishnet vest entered the room, followed curiously by Naruto. Shikaku turned to face Peter and remarked, Hokage. Sama, I assume this is Muryu. Peter corrected, turning back to the Hokage with a worried expression, my name is Peter. So what is it that you want to tell me? The Hokage looked at Naruto, coughed uneasily, and then looked directly into Peter's eyes. Hokage began, but Peter could tell by his solemn tone that the news would not be good. Konoha is a village of ninjas, as such we look upon people with bloodline limits as the treasures of Konoha. Peter, you have a unique bloodline limit, added with the fact that you are the first summoner of the spiders. The council had agreed to put you under the protection of ninjas who are capable of looking after you. Shikaku is your distant uncle. By the decree of the village council, from today onwards, you'll be living with him. Peter just stared fearfully at the Hokage, while Naruto went pale at the news. It started with Shikaku saying, don't worry Peter. The Nara clan has agreed on this, from now on, you'll be one of us. Peter turned to face Naruto, who was remarkably silent about the news. He was looking at the floor with sad eyes. Peter yelled, no, Naruto stared at him in disbelief. I am not leaving Naruto behind at the orphanage. We are sworn brothers now, and I am not going to go somewhere else and leave him alone. The Hokage spoke gravely, but there was a faint sparkle in his eyes. I understand your concern, but unfortunately, your adoption is by the mandate of the council. It cannot be lightly put aside. Peter sulked and said, then I'll run away. I am not leaving Naruto behind. Shikaku sighed, this is troublesome. Look, there's no need for talk about running away. Naruto can also come join us as an honorable member of the family. With a start, Hokage said, Shikaku, are you sure? Your clan a Euro? Shikaku rubbed his weary forehead and said to the Hokage, my wife will be okay with it. As for the clan, I'll deal with them. He looked at Naruto and Peter. Well, let's get Peter out of the hospital and I'll bring the two of you to meet my family. With tears in his eyes, Naruto questioned, you really mean it? You're taking both of us? In a serious tone, Shikaku stated, I don't go back on my word. Now, let's see about getting you two some new clothes at Euro. After his father had brought the two boys home and informed him that they were now Shikamaru's brothers and members of the Nara clan, Shikamaru cast a suspicious glance at them. After taking it calmly, his mother pulled his father into the kitchen and told him to take the two of them to the bathhouse to clean up. Although Shikamaru could hear raised voices, he was unable to understand their words. Shikamaru paused outside the building in question and remarked, this is the bathhouse, you can clean up here. Wow! Your own bathhouse. This is so nice, exclaimed the boy who went by Naruto, hurrying inside wearing his new attire. Peter, the other boy, smiled and nodded to Shikamaru, thank you. As the door closed behind them, Shikamaru paused to think. Living with that Naruto kid would probably be a pain because he is so noisy and energetic, but Peter seemed to be the complete opposite of Naruto Yuro. Calm and grown up. Shikamaru contemplated whether he was a skilled chess player. Shikaku. What do you think you're doing bringing that boy back with you? Yoshino yelled. You know how the elders feel about him. Shikaku tiredly rubbed his eyes. It was the only way to get Peter Ryu to join the clan. He refused to leave Naruto behind. Apparently they're quite close. Yoshino exclaimed angrily, I thought the boy is called Muryu? And that isn't a reason. Shikaku. Have you given any thought about how the social standing of the clan will be affected by adopting that boy as one of our own? Muryu insisted on being called by the name Peter and I've agreed with him we'll continue to let him use it. Shikaku sighed. Don't worry dear, I am the clan head, I'll explain my decision to adopt Naruto to the elders. Yoshino glared at him and said, you may be the head of the clan now, but another of your cousins can be easily chosen to take over your position. Honestly, I don't mind taking the boy in, but why give him false hopes when you know that the elders will force you to put him back into the orphanage anyway? Shikaku sighed after glancing at his wife. Because now I have the excuse to adopt him without anyone suspecting my intentions, and because Naruto is the only son of the fourth Hokage. The elders and the other Nara clan council members were seated in a circle. Shikaku approached them and gave them a small bow before taking the clan head's seat. In a raspy voice, one of the clan elders remarked, I think you know why you're called here Shikaku. Let us dispense with the formalities and explain to us why you chose to invite trouble to the clan by adopting the demon container. As he began distributing the papers in his hands, Shikaku remarked sardonically, Very well, council members. The information I am passing to you now is an SS rank top secret. It was one that I uncovered after many months of research. Anyone that betrayed this secret will be put to death by the clan. What? Shikaku exclaimed as he noticed one of his uncles staring at him in disbelief. Shikaku, what have you done? The clan never held any secrets of that high level before. To make sure he had their attention, Shikaku glanced at the council members. I'll explain in time. Elders, do you still remember that Kushina, wife of the 4th Hokage, was supposedly pregnant and was about to go into labor during the time Kyuubi attacked the village? Of course we remembered. It was such an auspicious event that was ruined by the arrival of that demon. One of the elders exploded. It is another reason why the demon container must never be allowed a place in our clan. As some of the council members expressed their agreement, there were some loud voices. Shikaku gave them a chilly look. I've always wondered. What happened to the baby? The 3rd Hokage had told everyone that the baby died, along with Kushina during the labor. Which coincidentally happened the night when the Kyuubi attacked our village. Shrugged Shikaku. There was never any funeral for the baby, and as time passed, he was forgotten as Konoha struggled to rebuild from the Kyuubi attack. I felt something wasn't right, and weeks after the attack, I did some digging on my own, searching hospital records and the old residence of the 4th Hokage. Shikaku, you know I will always stand by your decisions, but you're not making a strong argument for your case, which is the adoption of Naruto Uzumaki. A cousin of his intervened. What does the dead baby of the 4th Hokage have to do with anything? Shikaku bowed his head and looked down, saying, read the reports I've passed to you. The Nara clan had always prided itself on being a family of thinkers and keepers of knowledge. You can come to your own conclusion on the reports yourself. Everyone started reading the reports, but a few council members gave him suspicious glances. Shikaku remained in silent meditation, closing his eyes. This, oh my god, Euro. This cannot be true, cried a number of the council members as they completed the reports. The council members started arguing angrily with one another, which caused chaos. With a cool, collected voice that cut through the loud, agitated cries of the council members, Shikaku asked, why would I lie to you about a matter of such importance? Why do you think I said before I hand out the reports that this is an SS rank secret? The elder who had raised his voice paused before continuing, his face showing understanding. But if this information is true, why would the 3rd Hokage lie to us, Euro, unless Euro? An elder said. The 4th Hokage had made many enemies in his life. If news that the child of the 4th was still Olivia Euro, there would have been many assassination attempts, which without the 4th or his wife around to protect the child, the baby would have died sooner or later. Euro, not even the Anbu could be around every hour of the day to safeguard him. Another member of the council finished for him. But Shikaku, how can you be sure that the information you found is accurate? In the brashness of my youth, after I've suspected a cover-up, I've broke into the Hokage's secret library to uncover the truth. Euro, those are copies of what I found there. Shikaku grumbled. One of the elders remarked angrily, Shikaku, the Nara clan may be charged with treason if the 3rd Hokage learns of this. I've no intention of letting the clan members know about this secret that I've uncovered in the first place. Shikaku sighed. At first, I had considered taking this information with me to the afterlife after realizing how dangerous it could be, but then I had the opportunity to adopt Naruto Uzumaki, and the clan wanted to know why. After much consideration, I concluded that it would be best if the clan knew the truth because it would save us all a great deal of trouble and explanations. I am sure you haven't forgotten the debt that the Nara clan and many others owed to the 4th Hokage. I trust that all of you can keep the secret that I've passed to you and make the right judgments. I knew that despite our individual imperfections, we Naras as a whole are loyal to clan and village. No one spoke for a moment, and there was an awkward silence. One of the elders then spoke remorsefully. The elder said somberly, the fire in him extinguished, who would have ever thought that the demon container is the child of our most important hero? No wonder the 3rd Hokage had always told the citizens that the child is the legacy of the 4th. None of us guessed the truth. Euro, to think of how we've treated the child all those years. Euro, the Naras will always do the right thing. I will stand by your decision to adopt the child. It's the least we can do for the memory of the 4th Hokage. By protecting his son, Naruto Uzumaki. Shikaku grinned slightly as the other council members expressed their agreement, feeling as though a burden had been removed. For as long as he lived, Naruto Uzumaki would find a home with the Naras, so at least he wouldn't have to carry the weight of the secret alone. Sarutobi looked down at his crystal ball, which was populated with an image of the Nara clan council meeting. One of his inventions, the telescope jutsus, was capable of transmitting sounds and images of distant events. The 3rd Hokage gives a weary shake of his head. Who would have guessed that Shikaku would have discovered Naruto's birth secret and concealed it for so long? All members of the Nara clan council were now aware of it. Sarutobi might have been concerned if it had been any other clan. However, the Naras were among the few clans that were deadly loyal to him and the fourth, and they were also the least ambitious of all the clans. Furthermore, Shikaku was one of the few reliable ninjas in this generation. Sarutobi considered what he had witnessed. He questioned whether he had made the right decision in keeping Naruto's relationship with the fourth a secret given the shifts in the attitudes of the Nara clan members after they learned of his ancestry. He then considered how the Uchihas might have tried to take guardianship of Naruto if they had known the truth. The fourth's many adversaries would have pursued Naruto in an attempt to kill him. Sarutobi knew in his heart that the reasons he had concealed Naruto's birth were still valid. Sarutobi might reveal the secret to the public only after Naruto is fully grown and capable of caring for himself. Sarutobi commands the jutsus that contain the sounds and images in the crystal ball to be undone. To make sure they didn't make a mistake, he would continue to watch the Nara clan. He would entrust Naruto to their care and allow them to continue keeping their secret. After all, trust had to start somewhere, and Naruto needed a family that would be willing to look after him. There was a gentle knock on his door. Setting aside the stack of reports he was perusing, Sarutobi raised his gaze. Sarutobi called out, unsure of who it might be, "Come in." A woman with pink hair entered through the open door, nervously adjusting her glasses as she approached Sarutobi's desk and paused in front of him. She was identified by Sarutobi as one of the Ninja Library's assistant archivists. As Sarutobi started to read the reports, the woman said, "Hokage-sama, here are the reports you requested." She placed the reports on the table. Basically, we were able to discover that Muryu was not the only spider summoner in history. He was, however, the first person to summon a spider without a previous summoning contract. The clan Hiroyashi, who originally lived in Wind Country, supposedly tricked a lesser spider summoning contract from the spiders 200 years ago. According to the old histories, in retaliation for that trickery, the whole clan was cursed with a deformation bloodline. All direct descendants from the clan bear 6 or even 8 hands in some cases. Sarutobi frowned as he perused the reports and said, "I see a Euro. That's strange. If they were a ninja clan, I should have at least heard of them, but I've no recollection of the existence of such a clan." The archivist said politely, "That's because the clan secluded themselves after they were cursed. The last report we had of the clan was a note that the whole clan was wiped out after its leader angered the Wind Daimyo. Supposedly no more members of the clan survived the culling. That incident happened 50 years back, so it's no surprise you've never heard of the clan." Sarutobi nodded and remarked, "Aha, Euro, that would explain why there's no news of the clan. Good work. I'll read through the report. You may leave now." The archivist quietly departed, shutting the door behind her, and said, "Thanks, Hokage-sama." Looking at the reports, Sarutobi concluded that Peter had no connection to the Hiroyashi clan. The spider summons was the only similarity between those two. However, he was troubled by one word in the reports. Lesser spider summon had a prominent label. Is greater spider summons implied by that? Unable to comprehend what that would entail, Sarutobi shook his head. The fact that Peter received the spider summon in the spider bloodline, however, does calm him. Throughout the years he had watched Naruto grow up, Peter was always by Naruto's side as a friend to Yuro. Almost like a brother beyond blood. With the newfound status that Peter has in his friendship with Naruto, Naruto's life should be better than it was. Sarutobi experienced a sense of calm that he hadn't experienced in years, especially since the Nara clan was now keeping watch over the two of them. As he went back to his paperwork, Sarutobi prayed a little and put the reports he was holding aside to be filed later. Hopefully, things would go smoothly from now on. The answer is yes. Shikaku led the two boys into their new room, saying, "This will be your room, Naruto and Peter." Shikamaru followed them, his face expressionless. He had brought his futon with him, dragging it behind him as instructed by his father. "I thought the two of you would prefer to be together since everything is still new to you. In the future, if you want separate rooms, just let me know." Peter said, "It's okay, Nara sir. Naruto and I really enjoy this room. Thank you for allowing us to stay here," while Naruto gaped at the prospect of having their own room. It sounded weird to Naruto, who had spent his entire childhood in the orphanage dormitory, to not sleep in a room full of people. Shikamaru was shoved forward by Shikaku, who handed Peter a clock and said, "Now Peter, we've gone through this before. Drop the formalities and call me father. We're family now. Shikamaru will be sleeping in with you 3 for the night. I expect all of you to play nice and get to know each other. Lights out at 10, got it?" Peter and Shikamaru echoed, "Yes, father." Naruto kept looking around, still in awe of having his own room. Peter moved the 2 futons that were spread out on the floor to give Shikamaru a spot to place his own, saying, "Come on Naruto, let's prepare our futons." Naruto hurried to assist and said, "Oh alright." After just a few minutes of setting up their sleeping space, the 3 boys sat on their sleeping mats and gazed at one another. Shikamaru yawned and said, "So what should we do now? We already introduced ourselves this afternoon." With a look at Peter, Naruto said excitedly, "Peter can tell a bedtime story. Peter's really good at telling stories. He used to tell bedtime stories for everyone in the dormitory before we sleep every night." Wondering what tales Peter was familiar with, Shikamaru inquired inquisitively, "Bedtime stories?" Peter said, "All right then, if we're going to be telling stories, the 2 of you better get into your futons." He spoke in a mature manner. Shikamaru shrugged and then crawled into his futon, just like Naruto. "All right, I'm going to tell you the story of Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a long time there was an evil witch. At the odd word, Shikamaru questioned, "What's a witch?" From the side, Naruto wisely remarked, "A witch is like a very old ninja hag who is a woman. Peter invented her." Shikamaru fell silent, allowing Peter to continue the story, and he said, "Ah, I see. The witch lived in a house made of cake and candy. Peter went on, gently, recounting the well-known tale of his world. And then Hansel and Gretel tricked the witch into the oven and escaped, and they lived happily ever after. Peter grinned at Naruto's gentle snores as he glanced at the 2 boys at his side. Shikamaru had fallen asleep already. He sat in the room's silence for a while, thinking about what he would do next. He had a clear idea of what he wanted to do with his life. Those with power are the ninjas in this world. To ensure that he and Naruto would never be harmed again, he would train to become a ninja. Then there was the enormous spider that had kept them safe. Peter's final thought before he fell asleep in his futon was that he would figure out a way to call the spider once more so they could talk. He wanted to ask a lot of questions, such as why he was born. In Wind Country, beneath the undulating sands, giant shadows creep into the Great Dome. Before the Spider Sage, the oldest of their races, hundreds of spiders gathered. The boss spider formally declared, "The greater and lesser spiders are gathered before you, sage of all spiders." She was the only spider among all those gathered to reach the sage's enormous height and width. With a sigh, the spider sage addressed everyone in the large hollowed-out dome, saying, "Ah yes, it has been a long time since all of us have gathered together. Far too long. The last time we've gathered was 8 years ago, when we've pooled our essences to plead with the primal spider for help, to prevent the future we've seen from happening. And in the end our prayer was answered. The primal spider sent us one of its champions, a human male from another time and space, reborn as a baby. We've kept silent watch on him, and a week ago, Grienda, one of the spider scouts watching over our savior, made contact with him. He has agreed to the contract. He is now our summoner, and his thread is ours to weave. You are all summoned here so that we can begin the great weaving, to peer through the sands of time and all the possible futures, to use this new thread we've been given to prevent the future we've seen 8 years past from happening." The spider sage continued with a gloomy tone. "But before that, Grienda, I need you to go to the human world for one more task. Seek out the last survivor of the cursed clan who had tricked us centuries ago. Bring him to me. I have use for that soiled thread. He shall be part of the 20 that will change the future. Orochimaru grimaced and brushed the dirt of the dilapidated village off his shirt. He wouldn't be here if it weren't for the report from his spy network. An orphan from the Hiroyashi clan was reportedly spotted living here. For humanitarian reasons, Orochimaru did not want the child. No, Orochimaru valued the child more because of his ancestry. According to legend, that child was the only person with the Hiroyashi clan's bloodline still alive." Orochimaru's mouth opened in a grin at the idea, and he licked his lips. He could always use the child as cannon fodder if the bloodline turned out to be inferior, and the child would make excellent experiment material. The child is most likely seeking attention, especially considering that he was allegedly an orphan and an outcast. To turn the child into a devoted soldier, Orochimaru would only need to give them the necessities and display a little petty kindness. He saw the child right away as he was moving through the streets. Orochimaru was able to locate the boy with ease because of the wide berth the villagers gave him and the disgusted glances they directed at him. With a dejected expression on his face, the scrawny and filthy boy sat in a corner pleading for food, looking completely out of place with his 6 hands. The boy was already broken, which would make him even more susceptible to manipulation. Orochimaru grinned. He was about to approach the boy when the boy was engulfed in a black puff of smoke. When the villagers saw the enormous black spider that had materialized and was towering over the boy, they all let out screams. Orochimaru was aware that the Hiroyashi clan possessed the spider summon, but he was unaware that the boy could use it. He froze as he stared at it. What was the spider doing here at this moment? He doubted that the boy even had the necessary chakra to perform a summons. As the spider spoke to the boy who was gazing at it in wonder, a distinct, melodic voice could be heard in the air. The spider moved one leg closer to the boy and said, "Hiroyashi Kidomaru, you've been summoned by the spider sage to the sanctuary. Hold on to my leg and let's be off from this place." Orochimaru's gaze grew wide. He had no idea what the sanctuary was, but he was aware that the boy would be taken from him if he did not act quickly. Orochimaru was fairly shocked when multiple balls of webbing emerged from the spider summon, hitting the exploding tag off the air as he hurled it forward to divert the spider's attention while he hurried forward with chakra. Enhanced speed. Orochimaru had to quickly jump out of the way to avoid the other balls. "This child does not belong to you, summoner of snakes." The spider eyed Orochimaru with disdain. "Stay out of the affairs of the spiders, or we shall cut your thread from the great web." Before the spider and the boy vanished in a cloud of smoke, a wave of murderous intent erupted from it and swept across Orochimaru. Orochimaru hissed in frustration as he saw his prey vanish, and his eyes narrowed. There appeared to be a foot. He would have to investigate the spider summons to find out what they were doing, it would appear. Yoshino was busy in the kitchen making breakfast for 5 while the bacon sizzled on the pan. Like the majority of ninja clans, the Nara were wealthy, but they do not employ servants out of concern for betrayal. If the servants were merely spies sent to steal clan secrets, who would really know? The Nara clan as a whole disapproves of the practice of larger clans, such as the Uchiha and the Hyuga, using their weaker and non-ninja members as servants. Yoshino slapped her husband's head as he slept on the table, huffing, "You could help, you lazy bum. Women are supposed to serve Mina Euro." Shikaku jerked his head up in surprise, realizing what he had just said. "Aha Euro, I mean a Euro." Yoshino's left eyelid twitched, and she held the frying pan threateningly at her husband. Glowering at her husband, Yoshino raged, "I am sorry, but I thought that you were saying something about women supposed to serve men? I mean a Euro, I mean a Euro." Shikaku's words trailed off as he stammered to find a way to please his wife. "I mean you are the most wonderful, beautiful wife in the whole wide Euro." Boom. A loud explosion sounded from upstairs, causing the house to tremble. As Yoshino turned to face her husband, her rage quickly turned to worry. Yoshino shouted, "The boys!" and hurried up the stairs while threateningly holding the frying pan in front of her. Shikaku trailed behind, hastily gathering up a few kitchen knives. When Yoshino arrived at the boys' room, she slammed the doors open, the frying pan in front of her poised to strike any trespassers. The wisps of black smoke that poured out of the room surprised her. Her frying pan fell from her hands as she gazed in shock at the scene before her and realized what was in the room. Shikaku yelled, "Yoshino! What's going on?" as he protectively pushed his wife behind him, prepared to face the intruders. A golden-brown spider the size of the boys stood next to a very startled Peter and said, "Greetings Nara clan." Peter was using his little frame to protect Shikamaru and Naruto behind him after all 3 boys had exited their futons. "Forgive my entrance and all the smoke. I am still young and I'm still learning how to walk between the worlds." Shikaku stared at the spider in disbelief and said, "Ah, it is okay." Yoshino abruptly shoved him away and ran in the direction of the spider, brawling over him. At that moment, he noticed the dirty and undernourished child flinching behind the spider. When Shikaku saw that the child had 6 hands, he blinked. Yoshino hurried to the child's side and started examining his body, saying, "Oh you poor thing. Who did this to you?" The boy resisted her touch uncomfortably, but Yoshino held him tightly. The wounds on all 3 of his hands, which appeared to be from belt beatings, hardened her eyes. As he moved a big scroll off its back and gave it to Shikaku, the golden-brown spider answered, "Hiroyashi Kidomaru is an orphan, last of his clan. The spider sage asked me to pass this message to you. In exchange for you taking care of the boy as well as Peter Parker, the spider sage will allow one direct descendant from the Nara clan in each generation to sign the lesser spider summoning contract. Are you agreeable to this?" With a look that threatened to hurt her husband if he disagreed, Yoshino said, "Of course we will take care of the boy." Kidomaru, who appeared to want to be somewhere else but here, was held tightly by her. "Peter is already our charge, though you've got his name wrong. Is there anything else you wish to tell us? If not, I am going to treat this boy's wounds and get some food into him." Apparently disregarding Yoshino's correction of the name, the golden-brown spider said, "I have one last message for Peter Parker." While Shikamaru and Naruto looked at the spider with interest, Peter appeared to freeze at what the spider had to say. "You are the only one capable of summoning both the lesser and the greater spiders. That summoning contract is bond to you in blood and soul. Only your direct descendants will have access to the contract, and you are unable to add any who are not of your blood into the contract. With a distressed expression on his face, Peter interrupted, I don't care about that. I need to know why I am Harry Euro. What you wish to know will be answered when you've managed to summon one of us by your own strength. As per decree by the Spider Sage, you will need to prove to us that you are worthy of being the summoner of the spiders. We will speak again once you've accomplished that task. The golden brown spider entered before Peter finished. Farewell, Peter Parker. May your thread stays as bright as the Great One says. Peter let out a choked scream and sprang forward, determined to seize the spider before it could get away. But the spider left with a little explosion and more black smoke, and a powerful gust of wind pushed him back. Shikaku gazed curiously at his new foster son while Peter muttered in frustration, it didn't tell me anything. Meanwhile, Yoshino hurried the filthy six-handed boy down the stairs and out of the room so he could be cleaned and fed. Peter gave a seemingly helpless shrug, and Naruto asked curiously from the side, why did the spider call you Peter Parker? Peter sounded naive as he said, I have no idea. I was hoping it could tell me why they chose me to be their summoner. I guess I really have to learn how to summon them first before they'll reply me. Shikaku gave the boy a stern look. His years of ninja training had taught him that Peter was concealing something, but he had more pressing matters to attend to at the moment. He eyed the lesser spider summoning scroll thoughtfully and leaned down to pick it up. As he turned to Shikamaru, Naruto, and Peter, Shikaku commanded, boys, go downstairs and help your mom to settle the new boy in. I need to go and have a word with your uncles and the Hokage. Naruto grinned and hurried down the stairs, with Peter and Shikamaru trailing him slowly. Okay. Shikaku's hands flicked into the hand seals for the body flicker technique as they were leaving. He left an empty room behind as he teleported away, creating a swirl of wind.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.